project, I went around asking people what they knew about the Black Death and what they would do if it happened again. Here is what I found. All right, Leah, what do you think the Black Death is?
I have no idea.
No idea?
No idea.
Okay, what do you think the Black Death is?
It was
that thing in Europe.
It was a plague in Europe where a lot of people died.
Okay, and if the Black Death were to occur again, what would you do?
I would stay inside.
You'd stay inside?
I would not touch anyone.
Okay, that's good.
I would
Wash my
help
hands.
people.
You would help people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would invent a cure.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Definitely think the Black Death was definitely a plague in Europe.
Can you tell me anything else about it?
Probably where lots of people died. And it was maybe it was because of a black bug. Like a bug went around and bit the people and it injected them and they all died.
All right, ladies, what do you think the Black Death is?
How in the world do I know? Is it Black Death? Somebody ate something black and they died.
Okay, what do you think the Black Death is?
I don't know.
You
A
don't?
lot of people died.
Okay, and if it were to reoccur again, what would you do?
I would take my vitamins.
Take vitamins?
Yes.
All right.
I would quarantine myself in my own house.
All right, Maggie, what is the Black Death?
Well, if you see Monty Python, Holy Grail, obviously know what that is.
Okay, and if the Black Death were to reoccur, what would you do?
Probably cover my mouth, run around, seek shelter, get food,
Uh-huh.
and stay away from other people.
I would probably,
We look at the camera.
no, I'm thinking, I'd probably put myself in isolation.
As you can see, not many people know exactly what the Black Death is. And that right there is the reason why I wanted to do my project on it. Well, by now, you yourself are probably wondering, what is the Black Death? Well, to answer your question, we need to go back in time. All the way back to 1348. Imagine yourself in medieval Europe. Most think of knights in shining armor, and princesses in towers, and royal feasts. But that's where you're wrong. In 1348, the streets were covered in filth, and the air reeked of death. Think of the number 25 million. It's a pretty hard number to imagine, but that is the number of Europeans killed by the Black Death. Now, think of 75 million. That is the number of people across the entire world killed by the Black Death. The Black Death was made up of 3 different plagues: the bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic. To people living in 1348, the cause of these plagues must have been a huge mystery. But doctors nowadays know that fleas carried the sickness and then bit rats who transferred it to humans, who then spread it amongst each other. Of the 3 plagues, the bubonic was the most common. The bubonic plague affected your lymph nodes. The plague caused huge swellings to occur on the neck, armpits, and groin area. These swellings ranged from egg-sized to apple-sized. Victims would also have a fever and other various symptoms. Sadly, these unfortunate people had 3 to 7 days to live before they were taken by the plague. The pneumonic plague affected the respiratory system, causing victims to suffocate. Not only was this plague spread by rats, but also by simply breathing the same air as the victim. As one would guess, the plague was much more contagious and painful than the bubonic. These victims had less than 2 days to live. Lastly, the septicemic plague. This affected the bloodstream. Not much is known about this plague because the doctors of the time didn't exactly know much about the bloodstream in general. What we do know is that the disease would spread from the lymph nodes to the blood system. The septicemic plague would then cause a fever, chills, drowsiness, and stomach pain. It would also cause internal bleeding. Not fun. Many of the people I interviewed said that they would isolate themselves if the plague were to reoccur. That's exactly what Europeans did in 1348. They also had many other ways of protecting themselves from the plague. One form of curing the Black Death was witchcraft. People believed that by placing a live hen next to a victim and leaving it there for a couple days, the sickness would be drawn out. People also believed that washing themselves in rose and vinegar water would cure them. One strategy was to not eat any food that smelled bad, such as cheese or onions. Another belief was that if you cut yourself, the sickness would bleed out of you. But the strangest cure of all was their form of medicine. Doctors back then had some crazy ideas for how to cure the Black Death. One of them was to make a potion of sorts that they believed would draw the sickness out of you. First, they started off with 2 crushed eggshells. Yum. Then they would add marigold, or in our case, dandelion. Finally, they would add a nice fine ale to the mix. But since I'm 15, we're going to use Kool-Aid. And then they'd mix it all up. Yum. Although it's amusing, that's really what doctors thought would help. Nowadays, scientists and doctors know a lot more. For instance, they discovered from tree ring data that the plague struck during a cold, rainy, wet season. This hurt crops, which then affected people, because hungry people are vulnerable people. Another reason why the plague had such a huge effect was because no one in the world had ever experienced this before. Therefore, there was no immunity, and no one really knew what to do. There has also been a lot of talk in the media lately about the plagues possibly coming back. The thought of this sounds absolutely horrifying, right? But evolutionary geneticist at McMaster University in Ontario, Canada says, and I quote, "If the medieval plague were to return, don't worry. Modern antibiotics like tetracycline would be effective against it." Other things like sanitation, pest control, and general knowledge about our bodies would also give us an edge. I have learned so much about God throughout the course of this project. One thing that I noticed is that our bodies are so organized. And if one little thing goes wrong, everything can change. And I mean, only He can make something that intricate. Another thing that just blows my mind that I discovered during research is how much faith people put in God when they were sick. And I sit at this computer and I just think about how I shouldn't need to be faced with a murderous plague to put my faith in God. The last thing I have to say about this project is that I have learned so much. I mean, yeah, I've learned a lot about the Black Death and the plagues, but I've also learned a lot about our bodies, which is really important to know. So I'm really glad that we got to do this project. And with that, I am done.
Around the rosy pocket full of posy ashes, ashes, we ashes, ashes, we